Okay, ladies, we've got a small group today. I do know that Timmy is on her way, but we made her leave the office early because she's got to drive a long way through what we're pretty sure is flooded roads. So she should be on in a little bit. But I think probably for today, we don't need breakout rooms. So we're just going to kind of discuss. I'm hoping that you finish the book and you've got tons of great ideas for next year. But I wanted to share some really great resources with you, and then make sure that we all have everything just to return to as we go through life next year. All right, so I have shared with you guys a Google Drive, and I want to make sure that you still have it, even when, you know, in the future, it'll always be there if you have the link. Can you see that? Okay, so the recordings we have so far are in there, and then this is the folder that we'll be using today for resources. We'll be playing with some of this stuff. And then the little bookmark, you know, you could save it to your drive, copy it and make it your own, do something different with it, whatever. All of these things you can copy into your own drive or print off. These are view, so you won't mess them up. But if you save a copy, then you can play with it and do all kinds of other stuff with it. Lots of helpful things in here. And then these are day 1, 2, and 3, the slide decks. And then of course today's will be in there too. And then I'll do an email to everyone who's been participating, all that business. So that we'll be going kind of in and out of that. And then so far, we have been sharing our bookmarks at the end, but I'm wondering for chapters 5 and 6, which, you know, basically we're looking at putting it all together, really, the collaborative pieces, along with how can we make, I mean, chapter 6 is really like just everything is involved and engaged, and it's really kind of a utopian idea. But what were your major takeaways from chapter 5? Either of you, what'd you put in there?
On mine, it's after reading it just for years, I've always done collaborative learning in my class. I mean, there is nothing in my classroom that we don't have discussion about, we don't work with. If one person can't find it, another one will help find it.
Very nice.
Just all of it rolled into one is what I've always done.
Me too. And because I have a mixed class, I have students on IEPs plus regular ed, we have to, they feed off of each other. You know, people think, oh, the special ed kids are the ones who need help, but that's not always true. So it's always a collaboration. We have a lot of discussions.
Very good. And then chapter 6, what were your takeaways?
Unfortunately, I did not get to, my mom's been in the hospital.
Oh, okay.
So they just moved her actually a few minutes ago to the rehab. So I've been back and forth hospital since last week.
That's okay. Chapter 6 really is sort of about, imagine if this could happen everywhere. So it's,
can you let Katie in the meeting?
Yes, where are my participants? Oh, good. Okay, yes.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hello, how's everybody?
Doing great. Listen, Katie, you are 4 for 4. Thanks for being here.
Yes,
and then
she's our girl.
She's my girl now. So we were just looking at
I go in here.
kind of starting with our what we took out of the reading for chapters 5 and 6. Any big takeaways, what you thought about collaborative learning? And then of course, chapter 6, this is disciplinary literacy, where an entire site is really engulfed in it. Any words, phrases, takeaways, ahas, anything?
Well, when I was looking at collaboration, I was looking at page 147, and I like where it starts to talk about the power of collaboration, and it starts off with saying when teachers work with each other, they often find it easier to incorporate collaborative learning into their instruction. And for me personally, I agree with that, just because I had a pretty good 5th and 6th grade team this year that thankfully was really good about being able to collaborate with each other and plan around for our students. And I agree with that, because that collaboration showed with my kids, because they were able to see that collaboration with us. They were able to collaborate with each other. So I just agreed with that and really liked it.
Well, and how authentic that boy, when we really needed it this year, we had teams to depend on, like other professionals. Now, if we know how valuable that is, then we should be giving that to kids as often as possible as well. So, okay, good stuff. Well, let's dive right in. I did a quick resource reminder. I just want everyone to know you've got access to all this. The folder's called DL Book Study. Everything in there, lots and lots of resources from Corwin and then from what we've used together. So don't forget about that. And then at the end, I'll email everyone everything so that if you want to make a copy or play with it or adapt it or shift it, you go. Okay, so we looked last time at inquiry. And really, I'd love to hear from you guys what you're thinking about for next year, a unit or a lesson. How can we incorporate inquiry into some skill that you know your students must know and be able to do? How will you inquire, or how will you add inquiry? And then in what way will they actually be practicing the discipline? Which we're looking at English for most of us, but what's something you guys see next year? Some content that you'll use, either solving the mystery, interviewing the subject, some small group inquiry project, skeptic. Is there something you guys see next year you could go ahead and use this for?
I was looking at the Philadelphia lawyer thing.
Yes.
Because with science, they need to know specific questions to ask, because if you don't, where do you start? So I was looking at when I teach weather, it would be an easier way to have them go through and figure out, work together as a team, figure out questions that they need to ask to go look up and find answers for. And maybe instead of teaching it right out of the book, they get to be the person that has to go search up or has to do this or that, and they have to bring together and make a whole group project with it.
Now, don't forget, if we're gonna, using inquiry, you want to really help them decide on what texts, what resources.
Yes.
Really deciding the good stuff. And our textbooks are at least aligned with standards, but is it the most quality text that really helps them stay engaged? So, that's a piece of inquiry. They have to have that hook. It has to be something they want to start questioning. So I love that. Anyone else want to share idea for next year?
Well, in English, all of the question inquiry applies to everything we do, but just kind of, even with high school students, using the, like, okay, so you're a lawyer and you need all this information to solve the case or to present it to the judge or to the jury, could help give them a different perspective of who, what, where, why, how, and they need the details. They need to elaborate so the jury could have all the information, could help them explain. We have a lot of trouble with our kids collaborating and elaborating on information. So if it's presented to them from that perspective, okay, you're a lawyer and you got to present this to the jury.
Mhm.
They
Well,
can-
and she even provides us with actual, like, how to do it, how to get kids asking questions.
right.
So good. All right. So now we're looking at collaboration. Really, because I mean, everything else so far, we can have individuals, of course, focus on their reading, individuals focus on their writing, and then of course share out. But to really ensure collaborative learning is happening, we're all joined in, kind of a common task. Merriam-Webster says collaboration is working with another person or group in order to achieve or do something. Like we're not forced forward, we are driven, we are compelled together to get this thing, to do this thing. And I like how our author frames it as collaboration is the socialization of intelligence. So what I know and what you know becomes a part of our interaction. So one thing we know that students learn language socially. We learn our social language first and then our academic language. If you think about all the work we need them to do with language and learning, if we can socialize it, then there's that blending of the academic and the social through collaboration. The more they can talk about their learning, the more they're learning. And that social piece just sort of pushes it. So why we want collaborative learning activities, and they should be structured, we know that in quality collaboration, students are using the language of the discipline appropriately. So we've got maybe a word wall, or we've got words from our last unit. The language of the discipline is being used socially. We know that if we're collaborating well, we're listening to other people. What are their perspectives? We also tend to hold on better to our thinking because we had a collaborative experience. Question the status quo. And we looked at this in inquiry. We've looked at this in writing. Anytime we can get kids to sort of question the source, argue back with the source, be skeptical, that's intelligent. And then of course, when we're collaborating, we participate in the activities to construct meaning. So we're not just constructing meaning because someone told us we need to know this for a test. We are engaging in the activities, the thinking, the listening, the speaking, the doing of the discipline to construct meaning. And that's huge. I'm a constructivist. The brain does that. We just have to engage the brain so that it can do it. Now, she does help us with this whole idea of assessing, right? How do we know, in previous chapters, how do we know they're reading if I don't quiz them? We use the knowledge and then we know it's happening. How do we assess collaboration, right? So what she advises is that teachers become really expert at formative assessment, because when we have formative assessment, we're looking at while they're learning, we give feedback that'll redirect them. We give them guidance on how to proceed. Summative is after it should be completed. We evaluate how well. But the formative business happens during collaboration. We visit, we wander, we interject, we question, but we are the monitors. So when we have our small groups, when they're discussing, working together, asking, when they are functioning, We are the guides on the side who monitor. We're not evaluating while they're doing it. We're monitoring. If they're off track, we help them. If we're dealing with, an intellectual argument, we might provide another source to help solve that problem. Okay, so we're monitors. Okay, so here, this is for you guys. Take a moment. Your students are involved in a collaborative learning activity, and with a clipboard in hand, this is you. You begin walking through the room and monitoring the learning. Okay, so imagine. On your clipboard is a checklist of behaviors you're monitoring that gives an indication of how well each student is mastering the material and working within the group to help others master it as well. So, little sheet of paper, scratch sheet, or the back cover of the book, I don't even care. Brainstorm a list. What are the descriptors on your clipboard? What are the look-fors, if you will? What behaviors tell you that they're mastering the content? What behaviors tell you that they're working with others to help them master it as well? I'll give you a minute to brainstorm a few things you would be looking for as you walk around that room. So go ahead and in the chat, why don't you throw out a couple of the things you would definitely want to see? And then let's see if we came up with some similar ideas. Good stuff. Let me now show you one that our author worked on and made for us. It's a sample. And this is from page 168. You could walk around with this kind of thing just on your clipboard, right? Do I have a student referring to evidence, right? Are we saying, well, in the book we read yesterday, it said, or, well, that scientist that we heard from said, right? Accountable to the group, listens and builds on others' ideas. And of course, students would know what you're looking for in advance. Shows understanding of key concepts, asks questions, presents reasonable arguments, interacts with peers. I think I would probably want to do like maybe a box with hash marks of like the disciplinary vocabulary, like who, if we're talking about, I don't know what we might be talking about. If we're talking about a poetry thing, are we using the language of rhyme scheme? Are we talking about, the specifics of the discipline? So that is a helpful little tool that is in our folder for you. So our author says that the goal is for students to be so immersed in their discussion that they hardly notice you're there. So they're not just getting on task when they see you approaching. They're taking care of business because they've got an issue they need to solve. They need to get to the bottom of it. They need to hear from others, and they really want to say their piece. We also know that students do not come to school knowing how to move from the social to academic talk, which is why this is so wonderful for them. We need to set norms, and knowing what norms are and what they look like is important for everyone in the room. But don't forget to include students in establishing the norms. And then she's got a sample for us, like this. Make sure everyone understands the purpose of the discussion. What is our goal here? What are we working on? We're practicing language. We're solving an issue. We're, trying to figure out. Listen actively and openly. Don't talk over each other. Make sure your statements are accurate and credible. How do you know what you're saying is true? That's that refer to evidence or come up with evidence, find something. Everyone contributes, but how can be a different norm that's set up. And just think about career readiness, right? If we have students who learn how to give and take respectfully, they're ready for more workplaces. So that's a skill that we need them to have it. All students need the opportunity to learn how to participate in the authentic give and take of a dialogue where they engage in the risks necessary for growth. So we're talking here about intellectual and academic risk taking. We're not talking about bungee jumping. We're talking about, do I feel brave enough to say what I'm thinking? I don't want to look stupid. Well, here's the deal. You now have a text to support you, and your viewpoint matters. If those things are true, then they can actually take risks. They've got something to depend on and a sense of contribution. We all want to be valued.
I have students who, and I think we all do, get in those groups and then they don't participate. So I tried something and it works. Before they get into their groups or before, I have everyone write down at least 2 things they want to know that they don't know, or, I want to make sure they're participating.
So what you've done is you've asked them to prepare independently, and then they feel like they've got something they can bring to the group.
Well, and then when they get in the group, what they do is they put those cards in the middle and everybody pulls a card and everyone else has to answer. So someone else has to answer at least 2 questions on that card.
I like that
And
activity.
they go into their discussion. So it kind of ensures that everyone is participating, whether they don't, a lot of kids don't want to talk. So
that's right.
But it helps them get involved. And maybe it can be as simple as, well, what did you write on my card? Somebody wrote something that I can't read it. Now you got that kid that doesn't talk asking somebody, what did they write? And then, so that's a conversation starter too. And
that helps.
Just kind of pushes them a little further in collaborating.
So in our book, in this chapter, she kind of overviews 3 possible activities, and there are others. Student-led whole group discussion, and then seminars, Socratic seminars or not, and then learning beyond the classroom. And that's where we really play with, service projects, home things, authentic stuff outside of the classroom. But today I wanted to spend a fair amount of time on seminars. But before that, she did give us some very helpful pieces on, let's see, I think Timmy's in now. Yay, hi, Timmy. Sorry, I'm this excited when all of you are here. I'm glad Timmy made it home through the floodwaters. So student-led whole group discussion, pretty straightforward, but guys, you want to have a protocol, you want to have norms and established how it works, because they really do have to learn how to function in a discussion. I mean, we've got so many examples right now on TV and real life where it seems that civilized exchanges really didn't get learned for like a whole generation. So let's bring it back. Yeah, we can argue, we don't have to agree, but there are intellectual and respectful ways to do it. Seminars. Anyone know, what did our author say about seminars? Not so great, favorite, not her favorite? Because I yelled back at the book and I said, me too. These are the best, okay? The best. These are the best activities for learning, reviewing, feeling self-esteem as a student, really learning how to listen and give, how to disagree but use evidence, how to change your mind with dignity. All of those things happen with seminars. So I'm telling you, our author's a huge fan. I'm a huge fan. It's a good thing, any subject. So I wanted to play with this with just, a little while with you guys. The idea here is that the information itself is a tool, and whatever you put in their hands, they're going to learn. So put something good in their hands. The big thing here is the inquiry, the questions we're going to ask, the exchanges we're going to have. So put something quality in their hands because they are going to be digging in. Okay. And then it's formal, always based on a text. We're going to use protocols, and then make sure there is a facilitator. This is really good advice from her. And there are lots of ways out there. Avid has really great protocols for how to do seminars. I've got a couple examples for you I wanted to share with you. Remember earlier, I referenced the book where she says collaboration is the socialization of intelligence. So I want you guys to watch this clip. Scaffolding discussion.
I can discuss whether or not Confederate monuments should be removed by listening to my peers and using evidence.
By talking and expressing oneself,
see it and hear
learn
it?
more deeply. One thing we know from the science of learning is that complex instruction needs to be scaffolded, that students need to be enabled to take each step along the path. And in this classroom, we see a very sophisticated conversation being scaffolded to help them learn how to talk to each other about this very difficult concept in a very respectful and thoughtful way.
We've just finished a 6-week unit on the Civil War. They needed a safe space to talk about racial issues and justice issues. I decided a discussion would be the best way for them to learn about the issue, bring in evidence, and have their voices be heard. I sourced about 15 different articles to meet kids where they were at in terms of length of texts or level of complexity of texts.
Part of the scaffolding in this classroom is that this teacher has found 15 different texts for students to read to prepare for the discussion so that they can speak with evidence and so that their evidence is accessible to them.
It's important to understand that even though somebody says something you might disagree with, everybody's contributing to this shared dialogue in this safe space. Somebody start us off.
I think Confederate monuments should be removed based on the Atlantic. It said establishing monuments to Confederate war heroes in turn celebrates men who committed treason.
I was very pleased with a lot of students who really came out of their shell.
I want to disagree with a lot of you saying that they're bad.
I loved that there was healthy debate.
I don't know about the rest of you, but I don't want that in this country.
We need to find a way for each side to be able to see the opposing side's points instead of just argue them.
They were polite, they were encouraging, and I think it helps them understand that deeper understanding of history.
It's all in perspective. If you know it's wrong, then you can use it to create change.
So we're actually going to stop there. There were a couple people in the room tracking things from the conversation.
She's thought about the fact that some students may be more comfortable participating by tracking the conversation and then reporting out what they found.
Athen used evidence in a cool way. He brought up how.
So there are many ways for students to get their brains engaged and to be participating in this discussion. the deep conversation they've just had is actually extended by the fact that they get to reflect at the end in writing.
Tell me how your thinking is now changed after this conversation. It's okay if it didn't change, but you need to tell me why.
That reflection, which is metacognitive, really helps the students carry more learning out of the experience they just had.
So, by the way, I'm a huge fan of Edutopia. Did you see how intelligence is socialized? Those were 10th graders. Did it seem like disagreement was allowed? And how to disagree was covered. And then I'm going to send these to you guys as well. I've got a couple, we used this at the last school I was at. We used these to help some teachers visualize how to do Socratic seminars. So got a couple there. We're not going to, I want to save time, but I wanted to show you this. And this is something that I would definitely share with my students. I like this very one I have shared with my students before. And let's see, can I make it smaller? Well, it's there for you, but 6 types of Socratic questions, right? So this might be on a bookmark that they hold on to. And like when it's time for a seminar, we're going to read this article, or 4 of us are going to read this article on the top of, different articles, but we're all going to have a similar discussion and we'll refer to our text. But here are the kind of things that we are going to question. We might clarify, we might challenge assumptions, we might examine evidence and rationale. And these can be things that teacher, if conversation slows down or if there's a lull, teacher can interject any of these questions. Considering alternative perspectives. Is there an alternative? Can you refer to the text and find an example of an alternate way to look at this? Implications and consequences. Now, even if I'm not a great reader, I've heard the conversation and I can say, what does this mean for us in the world now? And then we've got kids thinking critically, connecting something that maybe they struggled with to real world, and they're contributing. They're growing dendrites. And then meta questions. Why do you think I asked that question? What's the point of that question? The question that was just asked, what is the point of that? What are you supposed to be thinking? So any question about thinking is a good, Socratic question. Okay. So then she also talks about, besides seminars, we've got service learning projects. I really want to hear from some of you guys because our experience in the classroom, the typical classroom, this seems very challenging. Have any of you had an experience where a service learning project or something that went kind of beyond the classroom that students did? Have you had that experience either in your student life or your teaching life? Does it seem like it's too much to organize or too much to make happen?
Only thing I can think of, Shana, would be when I think of this, that it's done the right way, would be family consumer science and vocation, VOAG. And especially those students who actually they run raising their animals and as a business.
Okay.
I never thought about doing it in my class because we have it in facts, as she said. Then we have the oh, I forget what that class is, but that's what they're all, the whole class is service learning projects. And then we have the ag that does it and another class that. So I just never thought about it in my class because I figure our students are doing it all over the place.
The idea is, how can we connect your curriculum, your discipline to life? And so I can tell you a couple examples from personal experience. We have an English teacher that I worked with, and they started a club, and they were reading just Shakespeare, because we don't do a ton of Shakespeare in the actual classroom these days. And a couple of the students decided that, there are so many references to plants and flowers and foods. So they ended up doing a Shakespeare garden. And we got a chunk of grass out front of the school. It was semi-protected, partial sun, etc. Dug it up, fixed it up. This was outside of school time. And then got seeds and planted. And then they made little signs for each of the plants. And some of them were just flowers. And so they would do little projects in class to show what these actually looked like. So when you're reading something, you can see what it is. And when they talk about the perfume of it, you can say, oh my gosh, that does smell pretty. Or, ew, why did they think that was a good smell? And then some of the stuff, is edible. So, they had one kind of lunch in the classroom with some, herbs and whatnot, but it was whatever. It was something they grew and they enjoyed it. I can also tell you one of our science classes actually did a project, and boy, it was tough, but they were in charge of it. They did recycling. They had to go through and figure out who does recycling in the community. What can we recycle? How does it need to be done? And so they made little signs for every classroom of how, what it could be. Please remove your staples, that kind of thing. And then they collected plastics, and they were pretty disappointed when they would get bins of what they thought would be plastic, and there was just trash in there. Pretty upsetting. So there are all kinds of things we can do. And then I was telling Timmy earlier, when I was at the alternative school, we took some kids literally on an overnight field trip to Roman Nose, where we planted trees, we cleaned up areas, and then we read about, our science teacher did something on conservation and trees and whatnot. And in English, we were, we read poetry, we wrote, we looked at, not On Golden Pond, that was a movie, but the guy, who removed
Walden's Pond.
No, come on now. He removed himself from society.
Walden's Pond. That's called Walden's Pond.
Oh, Walden. Yes, on Walden. I thought you were saying Robin. I was like, there's no Robin Pond. Yes, Walden. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Juanita. Okay. So, you connect these things, but then you have them do something, and they can feel the meaning and the contribution, not just a contribution in class and not just a contribution to their friend, but a contribution. So we are growing not only how to work together, but we're going to grow how to be a contributor to our community. And guys, they don't just know that naturally. Some of us, teachers, it's like we had this weird call to serve and be paid very little and respected hardly, but we know we're making a difference, right? Let's help our children understand, what do they have to contribute and how much joy it can bring them to do that. I loved some of the examples in the book with the food class, the food lit people. They had their, we had a football team. I know a lot of football coaches do this, like before a game, they'll do a team lunch so that it's like a family. They're being fed. They talk about each other's strengths. They build each other up. It's a pretty nice thing. So, I would challenge you to try to think about how can we have children, students do something and feel good about it because of what they learned in class and what they're doing in their room, their community. So our author, this is a quote from a student: "When we rely on each other to come up with something that is important or meaningful, we really begin working together rather than just doing what the teacher tells us to do in a group." We want that. We are growing community members. We are growing future professionals. So let's give them all the experiences we can so they can feel that they are contributors and they're important. Okay, so now I want you to, and I know maybe not everyone got to the last chapter. I will say that you can get everything you need out of the book without reading the last chapter, but it is a visionary chapter. So I'd like you to go to page 200. It is the last page of the reading. And highlighter in hand, I want you to mark up the chunk, page 200. It's 2 paragraphs under working for knowledge. What do you believe in reading that chunky paragraph and then the tiny paragraph? What do you believe are the most important words or phrases in that passage? And I'll give you a minute to play with that. So my first question, and anyone please answer, why is the subtitle for this little chunk working for knowledge?
Because it's not being spoon fed to the students. They're having to find meaning on their own instead of being told what they're supposed to find.
Anyone else? Would someone like to add Timmy's idea?
And I think with that in mind, we need to allow them to fail so that they can be built up and they have that sense of accomplishment when they can verbalize what they're thinking, what they're learning.
I mean, we really are at this point in the book, we are way beyond reading, writing, right? At this point, we are talking about an entire human being that we are helping prepare for life. I mean, that's just a little thing, right? It's not very important. Okay, so I would like to call your attention to one phrase. This is one I highlighted, but I'm wondering, what the heck is re-intellectualization of schoolwork? I think this goes back to what Timmy said. Both of you really. But can someone put that in like student-friendly language? Like if you start your class next year and you tell your class, guys, we are going to have a year where we are going to re-intellectualize schoolwork. What does that mean?
How we're gonna look at it and how we're gonna approach it from a different perspective than we always have been.
Okay.
It's almost like breaking it down so we can build it back up.
I had a student who would always say, Ms. Morgan, can you dummy that down? So I guess that's how I would. Yeah.
If we're asking students to not only be smart, but to respect each other's intelligence, and that in fact becomes the work where we're thinking and we're taking from each other's thinking, and then we grow our thinking because of other people. We are intellectualizing schoolwork. We're not filling out worksheets. We are not answering level 1 questions. We are taking schoolwork and turning it into an intellectual process where I am, as a student, I am demanded to be intelligent and critical thinking. It's just something I'm going to have to do because I'm compelled to share my thinking and grow my thinking. And I want others around me to be thinking more. And I want to hear what they think. Every time we care about thinking or other people's thinking, we're being intellectuals. And when we are compelled to intellectualize, we're all better, we're ready for life. And any sort of tedious content you want them to learn, no problem. It'll be in there. As long as you give them quality text to work from, they're going to be arguing with each other in very sophisticated ways. They're going to pull thinking out. They're going to stop talking about the text and start deciding how to solve, world hunger. It's just going to happen. They love that. Teenagers really have a sense that they can impact the entire world. So give them a forum to do that. Are you guys ready to re-intellectualize schoolwork next year? Yeah. Okay, good. So we're going to do a quick jot. Again, this can be on a piece of paper, can be on the, back page of your book. I really don't care. But a quick jot would typically be on an index card or on a sticky note. I'm pulling this from page 91 and 92, where we do writing. And the quick jot can be like an exit slip, an enter slip, a middle of the class, whatever, okay? And she even gives us some prompts we can use for a quick jot. But you can also have students add to quick jot prompts. You can just have a list kind of growing on the side of the wall. For today, my quick jot prompt for you guys is this. Jot it down.
Are you going to tell us first before we do this what the thing was you highlighted on page 200? Oh,
Yeah, I highlighted treated as intelligent people.
yeah.
I tell you what, I don't like coming into a meeting where people just tell me what I should think and then go off and do it. Nuh-uh. You give me something to care about, and then I will think about it, and then I'll participate in it, and then I'm treated like a smart person who has ideas to improve what we thought we had that day. Bam! So for today, here's your prompt. And then we're going to, after you sort of do a sticky note on your own, we're going to put it in the chat. What will you, I'm Uncle Sam now, I guess, except I'm Auntie Shayna. What will you do to be an ambassador of disciplinary literacy on your team, at your school, in your district? So thinking about everything we've read and this very last piece right here, what are you going to do? All right. If you would kindly put your promise in writing in the chat, and then we'll all have it recorded. You will have stated publicly what you plan to do to take action, and then you're more likely to do it. So you. Yes, we're sharing. Yes. So Tessa, are you gonna say, hey, come watch my second hour, see how it goes? Nice. You could even do crazy recordings of yourself and, you know, put it out there. If you crash and burn, but then come back the next day and try it again and see how it's successful, you've just fixed the glitches for other teachers. It's good stuff. Other teachers love watching you crash, burn, and then come back. Beautiful, because we've all been there. Yes, yes, Katie, you do it. So here's what we do have. We've got some time now. We've got July, a chunk of August, and then the rest of our lives to sort of tweak and shift what we've done in the past. How can we do it better? How can we have the students do the thinking with our facilitating? Before we go, one of my favorite pages, and I hope you guys liked it. My favorite page, 176. I can honestly tell you, when I was a new teacher, control freak. The truth is, a good facilitator loosens the reins a little bit, but you know when to bring it back and when to send it back out. I just love this. If I were still in the classroom, I think I'd probably laminate this and just kind of stick it on my desk where I can see it to remind myself to back up. Let the kids take it a little bit. Let them think. Let's go. You got to provide them with the right tools and then remind them when they're off, and then reward them with praise. Acknowledge the good stuff that's going on. Okay. Oh, active consumers of written material. That's beautiful, Timmy. All right, so I wanted to throw out one last offer to you guys. I just want to, you know, always peddle. I always peddle PD. I'm a PD salesperson, but it's all free. So as you head into next year, I want you to use your book, use the materials, spread the word, okay? Share the book, or write to me. Call me. Let's see if we can write a grant. And maybe we could get a whole book study at your site or just with your team. I'll tell you, outside of this book, we don't even have to purchase the book. I've got disciplinary literacy training planned and ready. It could be a 3-day thing. It could be 3 lunch period thing. It could be 1 PD day. I don't care. But if you want your team to start thinking about disciplinary literacy, it's really nice for like a group of history teachers that work together to do the training together, etc. So just let me know. Get out there. There's quality stuff. This book is just a beautiful starter. But I do want you to know that I'm your resource anytime. And you should, in fact, take action. We're in education, not to just keep things the same. We're in education to improve things. So take action with the adults and the students in your lives. 21, 22. I've never been so optimistic. How about you guys? I mean, we've seen what school can be. So we're very excited about what it will be, right? Anything else? How can I help anyone before we say our final goodbyes? All right. Juanita, get some rest and take care of your loved ones, but self-care first. The rest of you guys, I can't wait to hear you. I'd love you to randomly email me throughout the year. Hey, I did this thing. It was crazy good. Okay. All right then. Thanks, guys, and have a great school year. But
Thank you,
first,
Shayna.
bye, guys.